Have you ever thought about why some people seem to accomplish impossible things while barely breaking a sweat? Why certain leaders are celebrated as geniuses when they never actually created anything themselves? Why the most powerful people in history were rarely the ones doing the actual work? This video will fundamentally change how you understand power, success, and the invisible architecture of human achievement. By the end of this, you will see the world differently. You will understand a truth so uncomfortable that most people spend their entire lives refusing to acknowledge it. Let me tell you a story about Thomas Edison. You know him as the inventor of the light bulb, the phonograph, over 1,000 patents to his name. The genius who brought electricity to the modern world. But here's what they do not teach you in school. Edison did not invent most of those things. He had a laboratory full of brilliant engineers and scientists working for him. Men like Nikola Tesla, who actually designed many of the electrical systems Edison took credit for. Men whose names you have never heard because Edison made sure history remembered only his name. Edison understood something profound about power. He understood Law 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. This is not about being lazy. This is not about being unethical. This is about understanding how power actually operates in the real world, not how we wish it operated. Think about every major corporation you admire. Apple, Google, Amazon. Do you really think Steve Jobs personally designed every circuit board, wrote every line of code, conceived every innovation that made Apple a trillion-dollar company? Do you think Jeff Bezos personally packs boxes in warehouses? Of course not. But they get the credit. They become the face of innovation. Their names become synonymous with genius. Why? Because they understood this law. Now, before you dismiss this as immoral or cynical, let me take you deeper. This law is not about exploitation. It is about understanding a fundamental truth of human civilization. Every single achievement you have ever heard of, every monument, every invention, every breakthrough, was built on the invisible labor of thousands. The pyramids were not built by pharaohs. The Sistine Chapel was not painted by the Pope. The iPhone was not created by one man in a garage. Yet we attribute these achievements to singular figures. Why? Because human beings need heroes. We need simple narratives. We need someone to point to and say, that person changed the world. The reality is always more complex, always more collaborative, always more distributed. But complexity does not inspire. Complexity does not sell. Complexity does not create legends. So we simplify. We attribute. We give credit to the person at the top. Let me explain how this works through the lens of evolution. For millions of years, humans survived in small tribes. In these tribes, status was everything. Status meant better food, better mates, better survival for your offspring. But how did you gain status? Not by doing everything yourself. That was impossible. You gained status by coordinating the efforts of others. The most successful leaders were not the strongest hunters or the most skilled toolmakers. They were the people who could organize groups, delegate tasks, and take responsibility for the outcome. When the hunt succeeded, the leader got the glory. When the harvest was plentiful, the chief received the honors. This was not unfair. The leader carried the burden of decision-making, the weight of responsibility, the risk of failure. If the hunt failed, if the harvest died, the leader faced consequences. So the system balanced itself. Effort from many, credit to the coordinator. This pattern is hardwired into human psychology. We still operate this way. Every organization, every company, every government, every military follows this exact structure. Many people do the work. One person takes the credit. And we accept this as natural. We even celebrate it. We create awards for CEOs, statues for generals, Nobel Prizes for scientists whose teams did the actual research. Now here is the twist, the part that will make you uncomfortable. This system is not broken. This system works. It works because someone needs to take responsibility for the vision. Someone needs to make the final decisions. Someone needs to bear the burden of failure. And that person deserves the credit for success. Think about a film. Hundreds of people work on a film. Cinematographers, editors, sound designers, costume designers, actors, writers. But when the film wins an award, the director takes the stage. Is this unfair? On the surface, maybe. But the director had the vision. The director made thousands of decisions that shaped every frame. The director coordinated all that talent toward a singular purpose. Without that coordination, you have chaos. You have 100 brilliant people pulling in different directions, creating nothing. This is why Law 7 is not about laziness or theft. It is about understanding your role in the architecture of achievement. Are you the person with the vision, or are you the person executing someone else's vision? Both roles are necessary. Both roles are valuable. But only one role gets remembered by history. Let me give you a modern example. Mark Zuckerberg did not write most of the code that makes Facebook work today. Facebook employs tens of thousands of engineers, far more talented than Zuckerberg in specific technical domains. But Zuckerberg gets the credit for Facebook. Why? Because he had the vision. He made the strategic decisions. He took the risks. And most importantly, he positioned himself as the face of the company from the very beginning. Compare this to someone like Steve Wozniak. Wozniak was arguably the more brilliant engineer when Apple started. He built the actual computers that launched the company. But Steve Jobs took the credit. Jobs became the legend. Jobs is remembered as the genius of Apple. Wozniak is a footnote. This is not because Jobs was dishonest. This is because Jobs understood power. He understood that someone has to be the face, the leader, the person who takes responsibility and therefore deserves recognition. Now let us go darker. Let us talk about why this law can be dangerous, why it traps people, why it creates profound inequality and resentment in the world. Because if you only understand the surface of this law, you will use it to exploit people. You will steal credit that you do not deserve. You will become the boss everyone hates, the leader everyone undermines, the person history remembers as a fraud. Here is the danger. If you take credit without actually providing vision, without actually coordinating effort, without actually taking real risk, you are not practicing Law 7. You are just stealing. And people will know. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Your team will resent you. Your colleagues will undermine you. And when you fail, and you will fail because you have no real vision guiding the work, everyone will abandon you. I have seen this in every organization I have ever studied. The manager who takes credit for their team's ideas without ever contributing anything meaningful. The executive who presents work as their own without acknowledging the people who actually created it. These people think they are being clever. They think they are practicing Law 7. They are not. They are practicing fraud. And fraud always collapses eventually. The real application of Law 7 requires something much more sophisticated. It requires you to actually add value. It requires you to provide genuine vision, genuine coordination, genuine leadership. Let me break down how this actually works in practice. First, you must have a vision. Not just an idea, but a clear, compelling vision of what you want to achieve. This vision must be something other people can understand and believe in. If your vision is vague or uninspiring, no one will work hard for you. No one will give you their best effort. Your vision is your contribution. It is what justifies taking the credit later. Second, you must be able to identify talent. You must know who can execute different parts of your vision better than you can. This is crucial. Most people fail at Law 7 because their ego prevents them from acknowledging that others might be more skilled in specific areas. You must be ruthlessly honest about your limitations and relentlessly curious about other people's strengths. Third, you must coordinate. This is where the real work happens. Coordination is not sitting back and watching others work. Coordination is making hundreds of small decisions every day about priorities, resources, timing, strategy. Coordination is resolving conflicts between talented people who disagree about how to execute the vision. Coordination is maintaining morale when things get difficult. This is exhausting work. This is why the person who coordinates deserves credit. Fourth, you must protect your team. When things go wrong, when mistakes happen, when the outside world criticizes the work, you must take the blame. You must shield your team from consequences. This is the price of taking credit for success. If you take credit for success but deflect blame for failure, you are not a leader. You are a coward. And everyone will see through you. Fifth, you must give private acknowledgement. This is the secret that separates great leaders from frauds. Publicly, you take the credit. This is necessary for your power, for your status, for your ability to continue leading. But privately, you acknowledge everyone's contributions. You thank people sincerely. You promote them when opportunities arise. You share rewards generously. You make sure people feel valued even if the public does not know their names. When you do all 5 of these things, you are not exploiting people. You are leading them. And people want to be led. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They want their efforts to contribute to a meaningful vision. They do not actually need public credit as much as you think. What they need is to feel valued, to feel secure, to feel that their work matters. Give them that, and they will happily let you take the credit. Now let me tell you about a historical example that perfectly illustrates both the power and the danger of this law. Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon was one of the most successful military commanders in history. He won dozens of battles, conquered most of Europe, revolutionized warfare, and became Emperor of France. But did Napoleon personally fight on the front lines? Did he personally fire cannons or lead cavalry charges? Of course not. He commanded. He strategized. He positioned his armies. He made decisions. And when his armies won, he took all the credit. But here is what made Napoleon a master of Law 7. He also shared the rewards. He promoted talented soldiers regardless of their background. He created a system where merit actually mattered, where a common soldier could become a general if he proved himself. He gave his soldiers glory, medals, titles, pensions. He made them feel like they were part of something historic. So they fought harder for him than they had ever fought for the old kings. But Napoleon also made the classic mistake that destroys everyone who misapplies this law. He started to believe his own myth. He started to think he actually was the singular genius responsible for everything. He stopped listening to advisors. He stopped coordinating effectively. He took foolish risks because he believed he was invincible. And when his luck ran out, when he invaded Russia in winter, when he lost at Waterloo, everyone abandoned him. All those soldiers who had once worshipped him stood by and watched him fall. Why? Because he had broken the contract. He had taken credit without continuing to provide real leadership. This is the existential trap of Law 7. When you successfully take credit for achievements, you start to believe you actually did everything yourself. You start to believe you are inherently superior to the people working for you. You start to believe you do not need them anymore. And that belief destroys you. I see this pattern everywhere in modern business. CEOs who become convinced of their own genius. Founders who start to think they are the only reason their company succeeded. Leaders who forget that their power depends entirely on the people they lead. These people always fall. Always. Sometimes it takes years, but it always happens. The antidote to this trap is humility. Real humility, not false modesty. You must constantly remind yourself that your success depends on other people's efforts. You must stay curious about their perspectives. You must remain grateful for their contributions. You must remember that your role is to serve the vision, not to serve your ego. Let me take you into the psychology of why this law is so powerful. Human beings are tribal creatures. We survived for hundreds of thousands of years by cooperating in groups. But cooperation creates a problem. How do you distribute credit in a group effort? If everyone gets equal credit, then nobody has incentive to take risks or make hard decisions. If only one person gets credit, then everyone else loses motivation. Evolution solved this problem with hierarchy. The person at the top of the hierarchy gets the credit, but they also carry the burden of leadership. This creates a natural balance. You want to climb the hierarchy to get more credit, but you also know that climbing means taking on more responsibility, more risk, more burden. This system keeps society stable. It gives ambitious people a path to power while ensuring that power comes with real obligations. Law 7 works because it aligns with this deep evolutionary programming. When you take credit for your team's work, you are not violating some natural law of fairness. You are fulfilling an ancient social contract. You are saying, I will take the credit, but I will also take the responsibility. I will be the one who gets celebrated when we succeed, but I will also be the one who faces consequences when we fail. The problem in modern society is that we have broken this contract in many places. We have created systems where people can take credit without taking real responsibility. Corporate executives who collect massive bonuses when their companies succeed but face no real consequences when their companies fail. Politicians who claim credit for economic growth but blame external factors for economic decline. Influencers who pretend to have expertise based on other people's research and ideas. These people are not practicing Law 7. They are practicing something much uglier. They are extracting value without adding value. And this creates the resentment and inequality that is tearing our societies apart. So how do you practice Law 7 ethically? How do you take credit without becoming a fraud? The answer is simple but difficult. You must actually lead. You must provide real value through your vision, your coordination, your decision-making. You must genuinely care about the people who work with you. And you must be willing to face real consequences when things go wrong. Let me give you a contemporary example of someone who does this well. Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. When Nadella took over Microsoft, the company was struggling. It had lost its innovative edge. It was being overtaken by competitors. The culture was toxic, full of internal politics and turf wars. Nadella transformed Microsoft completely. He changed the culture, refocused the strategy, made Microsoft one of the most valuable companies in the world again. Does Nadella get the credit for this turnaround? Absolutely. Articles are written about his leadership. He is praised as one of the great CEOs of this era. But did Nadella personally write the code for Azure, Microsoft's cloud platform? Did he personally design the Surface computers? Did he personally negotiate every business deal? Of course not. He had thousands of talented people doing that work. But Nadella provided something those people could not provide themselves. He provided a unifying vision. He created a culture where those talented people could actually collaborate instead of fighting each other. He made strategic decisions about which products to prioritize, which markets to enter, which acquisitions to make. He took responsibility when initiatives failed. And he generously shared rewards when initiatives succeeded. This is Law 7 executed at the highest level. Nadella takes the credit publicly, but everyone at Microsoft knows he genuinely values their contributions. They work hard for him not because they are forced to, but because they believe in the vision and they trust the leadership. This is the difference between power that lasts and power that collapses. Now let us talk about how you personally can apply this law, whether you are leading a company, managing a team, or just trying to advance your career. Because Law 7 is not just for CEOs and generals. It applies at every level of every hierarchy. If you are early in your career, you might think Law 7 does not apply to you yet. You are still the person doing the work, not the person taking the credit. But this is exactly when you need to understand this law most, because you need to decide what path you want to take. Do you want to be the person who executes, or the person who leads? If you want to lead, you need to start developing vision now. You need to start thinking beyond your individual tasks. You need to start asking, what is the bigger picture here? What are we really trying to achieve? How could we do this better? These questions shift your mindset from worker to leader. They prepare you for the moment when you will need to coordinate others. You also need to start building your reputation as someone who can take responsibility. Volunteer for projects that have risk. Speak up in meetings with ideas, even if they might be wrong. Take ownership of problems instead of deflecting blame. These actions signal to others that you are ready for leadership, ready to take credit, ready to carry the burden. But here is the crucial part. While you are building your leadership capabilities, you must also remain excellent at execution. Because if you cannot do the work yourself, you will never really understand how to lead people who do the work. The best leaders are people who were once great individual contributors. They understand what they are asking of people because they have done it themselves. Think about great military commanders. Almost all of them rose through the ranks. They were soldiers before they were generals. They know what it feels like to be cold, hungry, exhausted, terrified. So when they give orders, they understand the human cost. They can make better strategic decisions because they understand tactical reality. Leaders who never did the actual work make foolish decisions because they do not understand constraints. If you are already in a leadership position, Law 7 becomes even more critical. You must constantly balance taking credit with giving acknowledgement. You must resist the temptation to micromanage, because micromanaging reveals that you do not actually trust your team to do the work. And if you do not trust them, why should you take credit for their work? Instead, you must learn to lead through vision and culture. You set the direction. You establish the values. You make the hard decisions that require your authority. But then you step back and let talented people execute. When they do, you praise them privately and take credit publicly. This is not dishonest. This is how leadership actually works. You also must learn to recognize when you are out of your depth. There will be times when you need to bring in someone more skilled than you in a specific area. Your ego will resist this. Your ego will tell you that admitting you need help makes you look weak. But the opposite is true. The most powerful leaders are people who surround themselves with people smarter than they are in different domains. They take credit for having the wisdom to build a great team. Let me tell you about one more historical example, one that shows the ultimate expression of Law 7. The Manhattan Project, the secret American program that created the atomic bomb during World War II. This project involved some of the greatest scientific minds of the 20th century. Einstein, Fermi, Oppenheimer, Bohr, Feynman. Thousands of physicists, engineers, chemists, mathematicians working in secret facilities across the country. Who gets credit for creating the atomic bomb? In the public imagination, it is Robert Oppenheimer. There was even a recent movie about him. He is the face of the Manhattan Project. But did Oppenheimer personally split atoms? Did he personally calculate the chain reactions? Did he personally engineer the delivery mechanisms? No. He coordinated. He led. He made decisions. He carried the moral weight of what they were creating. And here is the most interesting part. Oppenheimer suffered for taking that credit. After the war, he was investigated, his security clearance was revoked, he was publicly humiliated. He became a symbol of both scientific achievement and moral ambiguity. The scientists who actually did the technical work largely returned to comfortable academic lives. But Oppenheimer, who took the credit, also bore the consequences. This is the ultimate truth of Law 7. Credit and responsibility are inseparable. If you want the glory, you must accept the burden. If you want your name in history books, you must be willing to have your name associated with failures too. If you want to be celebrated when things go right, you must be willing to be blamed when things go wrong. Most people do not actually want this bargain when they truly understand it. They want the credit without the responsibility. They want the glory without the burden. They want to be celebrated without being vulnerable. But power does not work that way. Real power always comes with real risk. So here's the question you must ask yourself. Are you willing to take real responsibility? Are you willing to make decisions knowing that people will blame you if those decisions turn out wrong? Are you willing to sacrifice your ego, to acknowledge that other people are more skilled than you in specific areas, while still maintaining the vision that guides everyone? If you answer yes, then you can practice Law 7 ethically and powerfully. You can build things larger than yourself. You can leave a legacy. You can become the kind of leader that people actually want to follow, not because you manipulate them, but because you genuinely serve a vision larger than your own ego. If you answer no, that is fine too. Not everyone needs to be a leader. The world needs brilliant individual contributors just as much as it needs coordinators. But if you choose that path, you must make peace with the fact that someone else will take credit for your work. And that is not unfair. That is the bargain you are making. You trade credit for freedom. You trade recognition for the ability to focus purely on the work you love without carrying the burden of leadership. The tragedy is the people who want credit without responsibility. The people who want to climb hierarchies without actually providing leadership. The people who take credit for other people's work without adding any real value through vision or coordination. These people poison organizations. They create cynicism and resentment. They make everyone around them miserable. And ultimately, they fail, because you cannot build anything lasting on fraud. Let me bring this back to where we started, with Thomas Edison. Yes, Edison took credit for work that other people did. Yes, he was ruthless in promoting himself and his laboratory's inventions as his personal genius. But Edison also provided something real. He created a laboratory that attracted brilliant people. He secured funding that allowed them to pursue ambitious projects. He had an instinct for which inventions would actually matter commercially. He took enormous financial risks that other investors would not take. Was Edison a perfect person? No. Was he fair in how he distributed credit? Probably not. But did he change the world? Absolutely. And he could not have done it without understanding Law 7. He knew that someone had to be the face of innovation. Someone had to take responsibility for successes and failures. Someone had to carry the vision forward even when experiments failed and investors lost faith. Edison chose to be that person. And by being that person, he enabled an entire generation of inventors to do work they could not have done otherwise. This is the paradox at the heart of Law 7. It seems unfair on the surface. It seems like the person taking credit is exploiting the people doing the work. But when practiced correctly, it is not exploitation. It is coordination. It is leadership. It is the only way humans have ever accomplished anything large and complex. Every cathedral that inspires us, every symphony that moves us, every scientific breakthrough that transforms our lives, every business that employs thousands, every movement that changes society, all of these things required someone to coordinate, to take credit, to bear responsibility. Without that person, you have brilliant individuals working in isolation, creating nothing that lasts. So the question is not whether Law 7 is moral. The question is whether you are willing to practice it correctly. Are you willing to add real value through vision and coordination? Are you willing to genuinely care about the people who execute your vision? Are you willing to take real responsibility when things fail? Are you willing to be generous in sharing rewards even if you take public credit? If you can do these things, then Law 7 is not manipulation. It is leadership. And the world desperately needs more real leaders, people who can coordinate the talents of others toward meaningful goals, people who can take credit gracefully while also taking responsibility seriously. Think about the problems facing humanity right now. Climate change, inequality, technological disruption, political polarization, pandemic threats. None of these problems will be solved by individual genius. They will only be solved by massive coordination of millions of people working toward common goals. That coordination requires leaders who understand Law 7. Leaders who can articulate compelling visions, organize collective action, make hard decisions, take responsibility for outcomes. We need people who are willing to step forward and say, I will take the credit, but I will also take the burden. I will be the person who gets celebrated if we succeed, but I will also be the person who faces consequences if we fail. I will coordinate your talents towards something meaningful, and in return, I will make sure you feel valued even if the public does not know your names. This is not exploitation. This is courage. It takes courage to accept responsibility. It takes courage to make decisions knowing that people will judge you. It takes courage to put yourself forward as a leader knowing that you will be criticized, attacked, blamed when things go wrong. Most people avoid this courage. They prefer to stay in the background, to do their work without taking on the burden of leadership. And again, that is fine. The world needs those people too. But then they cannot resent the people who do step forward. They cannot complain that leaders take credit while they do the work. Because that is the bargain. That is the ancient contract that makes human cooperation possible. What will you do with this understanding? Will you step forward as a leader, knowing that it means taking credit but also taking responsibility? Will you remain a talented individual contributor, making peace with the fact that someone else will be recognized for the collective achievement? Or will you try to take credit without responsibility, becoming the kind of person everyone resents? The choice is yours, but understand that your choice has consequences. If you choose leadership, you must actually lead. You must provide vision, coordination, genuine care for your team. You cannot fake this. People always know the difference between real leadership and fraud. If you choose to remain an individual contributor, you must genuinely make peace with letting others take credit. You cannot carry resentment about this. Resentment poisons you. It makes you bitter and cynical. It prevents you from doing your best work. If you make this choice, make it fully and embrace the freedom it gives you. And if you are tempted to take credit without responsibility, understand that this path always ends badly. You might get away with it temporarily. You might fool some people for a while. But eventually, people see through fraud. Eventually, you will face a crisis that exposes that you have no real vision, no real leadership ability. And when that happens, everyone will abandon you. The world remembers Edison, not his assistants. The world remembers Napoleon, not his soldiers. The world remembers Oppenheimer, not the thousands of scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project. This is not because the world is unfair. This is because human cognition requires simple narratives. We cannot process complexity. We cannot remember thousands of names. We need heroes. We need singular figures to attribute achievement to. Understanding this does not mean accepting injustice. It means understanding reality. And once you understand reality, you can work within it effectively. You can choose your role consciously instead of stumbling into resentment about roles you never explicitly chose. Law 7 is not about being dishonest. It is about understanding the architecture of human achievement. Someone must coordinate. Someone must take responsibility. Someone must be the face that represents collective effort. That person will get the credit. But if they do their job correctly, everyone benefits. The work gets done. The vision becomes reality. The team feels valued. The achievement lasts. This is the law. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. Not because you are lazy, not because you are exploitative, but because leadership requires someone to take responsibility, and responsibility earns the right to credit. Practice this law with integrity, with genuine care for your team, with real vision that makes their efforts meaningful. Do that, and you will build things that last. Do that, and people will willingly work for you, not because you manipulate them, but because you truly lead them. What will you create with this power? That is the question you must answer for yourself.